Middlesbrough could be set to complete their first signing of the summer after shock links with Danny Ings. According to Luke Edwards of The Telegraph, Middlesbrough are on the verge of completing a deal to sign the former Premier League striker on a free transfer this summer. Danny Ings is a free agent after leaving West Ham at the end of last season, and with his pedigree having played for the likes of Liverpool, Southampton, and Aston Villa over the years, he's certainly a player who could add undoubted experience to Middlesbrough in the Championship. So, what do we know about this prospective deal? I've taken a little look at the deal, how it could work, and where he could potentially fit into Middlesbrough's team if he was to sign. Here we go. Middlesbrough's interest in Danny Ings came a little bit as a surprise for Middlesbrough supporters when the interest emerged on Monday evening. It was Luke Edwards of The Telegraph who broke the news that Middlesbrough were on the verge of completing a deal to sign the former Premier League striker. Now, reports have emerged since then from the Northern Echo and Teesside Live suggesting that Danny Ings is just one of a number of targets who could potentially be coming to Middlesbrough. But it does feel like their talks have gone particularly well with Danny Ings, and he could well be the person that's coming into the club. So for Middlesbrough, there is a real need to sign a striker this summer. Obviously, it's a position that we desperately need to recruit in. We've got Tommy Conway in attack. Josh Coburn has left to join Millwall on a permanent basis, and there's a real gaping hole there, I guess, for another striker to come in and challenge Tommy Conway for that starting role in attack. Now, obviously, Emmanuel Latilath left the club in the January transfer window to join Atlanta in the MLS. He was replaced by Kelechi Iheanacho, who arrived on a loan deal and really flattered to deceive during his 6 months with the club. So it really is a position that the Middlesbrough do need to strengthen, but more importantly than that, it is a position that Middlesbrough really need to get right going into the new season. We do need someone who is going to be able to have a real impact on the team, someone who's going to be able to stay fully fit, but is crucially going to be able to score the goals that we need to really supplement Middlesbrough's attack. I think if Middlesbrough are going to be challenging for the playoffs and hoping to kick on next season and really kind of push for the top six, I think we do need someone who's going to be able to really kind of add goals and add real productivity to that attack. And Danny Ings is someone who could certainly do that based on his track record over the last few years. So if you look at Danny Ings' record over the last few years, you can see just how prolific he's been. So for the last 11 years, he's been playing outside of the Championship. He's been playing in the Premier League, but the goals to game tally that he's got there for a number of these clubs is pretty spectacular. So for Burnley, he scored 43 goals in 130 games. He's obviously went on and did very, very well. Went to Liverpool, didn't get a huge amount of game time with them, but has gone on to do extremely well with the likes of Bournemouth and Southampton and Aston Villa. He's landed at West Ham more recently, and he's kind of struggled a little bit, which we'll get onto in just a little bit. But if you're looking for a player who's got a proven track record of finding the back of the net, someone who is certainly going to be able to add goals to a team in the Championship, then Danny Ings would certainly be able to do that. He is one of the best, English finishers that you've sort of seen in the last few years. He is someone who, while he hasn't really been able to cement himself as a regular for England's national team, you've got to say he is someone who, had he been able to stay fit, would have potentially been able to offer a little bit more. He did get his big opportunity with Liverpool. That was kind of his only real crack at playing for one of the traditional big clubs. But I think his inability to stay fit and show his qualities on a regular basis was a little bit more difficult, and he sort of found his level, I guess, as a sort of mid-table Premier League striker. Now, obviously, Danny Ings is now pushing into his 30s. He's 32 years of age. He is someone who is kind of moving into the final few years of his career, and I think that has really kind of taken a toll on him from an injury point of view. I think while these numbers look quite impressive on the surface, you can see there from the West Ham side of things that things haven't really worked out for him in East London as well as what he would have sort of hoped. He hasn't really been able to replicate the same kind of goals record that he showed with the likes of Burnley and Southampton, and to a lesser extent Aston Villa as well. He was able to score goals on a regular basis for those clubs, but since moving to East London, he has sort of struggled to really get going. So this is how he's looked since moving to West Ham. So he arrived there in 2022. Played a reasonable amount of games. He played 69 games over the time at the London Stadium. Scored just 5 goals and provided just 5 assists. But you can see on the right there the amount of minutes that he's played during that time, and it hasn't really been a lot. Last season, played just 270 minutes in the Premier League over the course of the full campaign. So you've got to think that's less. That's about 3 full games, pretty much. Similar again the season before, he played 20 times, but only played 390 minutes. So it's been really kind of quite difficult for him to sort of get going. Out of those 69 appearances that he's made, he started just 14 times for West Ham. So you can kind of see why his goals per game ratio isn't quite what it had been at his previous clubs, and predominantly that's been down to injury. He hasn't really been able to keep himself fit. He hasn't been able to sort of, I think form and fitness kind of go hand in hand a little bit. And when someone is out for regular periods of time, when they do come back, it takes a little while for them to get going. Their minutes need to be managed. So it's kind of hard for them to come back and break straight back into the first team. But they come back and sometimes there's a little bit of a setback, and that kind of damages the player's confidence. And that really kind of seems to be the case for what happened for Danny Ings at West Ham. Particularly last season, there was a real need for West Ham to have a striker who was going to be able to score plenty of goals. It was obviously the situation with Michail Antonio and his horrific car crash. They went out and they signed Evan Ferguson I think it was in the January transfer window on a loan deal, and he failed to sort of hit the heights. And there has been a real need for West Ham to have a striker who was going to find the back of the net. So the opportunity has been there, and Danny Ings is someone who would have wanted to take that opportunity and prove himself as the man who could score the goals for West Ham. But just his lack of form and fitness has really hampered him, and ultimately that's the real reason why at the end of his contract at the end of last season the decision was made for Danny Ings to move on from West Ham to go in search of regular first team football elsewhere, and that ultimately leads us to the current situation that we're in. So as I said, the news was broke on Monday evening from Luke Edwards at the Telegraph that Middlesbrough were on the verge of signing Danny Ings. The reports then followed from the Northern Echo. It was Scott Wilson at the Northern Echo, who is an extremely reliable Middlesbrough reporter who has really close connections with Middlesbrough, but also around the club in terms of the deals that Middlesbrough are doing. And the update from them was still very positive. It was still one that Danny Ings was a player who was very much on Middlesbrough's radar, but perhaps just not quite as advanced as what Luke Edwards was saying. So the update in the Northern Echo was saying that Danny Ings was not offered a new deal at the end of the campaign by West Ham. He's since spent the last couple of weeks speaking with interesting clubs about a possible deal. Middlesbrough are one of those clubs, with senior officials having held talks with Ings to ascertain his likely wage demands ahead of more formal discussions. Talks have not yet reached an advanced stage, but there is interest from the Teessiders who are looking to bolster their attacking ranks this summer. There's been a similar report from Teesside Live, and Craig John saying that there was positive talks held with Danny Ings. So certainly some positive noises coming from those discussions. But once again, the fact that Danny Ings is just one of a number of attacking talents who Middlesbrough are going to be looking at this summer. So as I said, it is a position that Middlesbrough really need to strengthen. I think there are pros and cons to Danny Ings in terms of what he could bring to Middlesbrough. We mentioned some of them on the last slide with regards to his injury record. He is 32 years of age. You've got to think as well that Middlesbrough's whole recruitment model is largely based on bringing in players for a modest fee, being able to develop them and sell them on for a potential profit in the future. That's obviously not something that's going to happen with Danny Ings. You'd be very, very surprised if he was coming to the club and then he was going to be sold on for a big fee in a couple of years' time. You just can't really see that happening. I think he would be someone of a different profile. He'd be coming to the club on a free transfer. It'd be very much about coming in, making an immediate impression, supplementing Middlesbrough's attack, offering experience and guidance to the young players around them, and really hoping that over the next season or two, he can score the goals that would help Middlesbrough to press forward. Now, I think a deal for Ings would be simple on one hand, in that there's not a transfer fee to iron out. It would be a free transfer, so that is a positive from a cost point of view. But Danny Ings is a player who, as I said previously, has spent the last 10 or 11 seasons playing in the Premier League. He would be coming with big wage demands. He's going to be expecting a wage packet that is remotely similar to what he was earning at West Ham. He is going to be someone who's wanting big money, but that would probably depend on, I guess, what he's likely to offer moving forward. I think for Middlesbrough, they would need assurances that he was someone who was going to be fit. I think his injury record is something that could be used as a bit of a bargaining chip, because Middlesbrough aren't going to want to pay an extortionate amount on wages for a player who's only going to be able to be fit to play 10 or 15 times, or is only going to be fit enough to play for 5-10 minutes on a match day. They want someone, if they are going to be paying a huge amount in wages, someone who would likely be one of Middlesbrough's highest earners if he was to come in. They would want someone who was going to be regular in terms of his availability, someone who was going to be someone who could score goals on a regular basis. And so that is something that Middlesbrough would need to weigh up. We would need to make sure that we were getting the right deal for this player, because while he could offer a huge amount to Middlesbrough, both on and off the pitch, it would also be a very expensive deal. And so the risk versus reward has to be absolutely right on this one if Middlesbrough are going to be looking to sign Danny Ings this summer. So I think if Danny Ings was coming to Middlesbrough, it's quite obvious where he would fit into the team. He is a striker. Middlesbrough are looking for a striker, so he would absolutely add vital quality at the top end of the pitch. Now, there was a little bit of reaction on social media yesterday to the links with Danny Ings, and there was a bit of a split, you've got to say, over whether people thought it was a good deal or not. Some people were saying that, I guess, to do with the Premier League quality that he's got and his goal record, he is someone who would be a really good fit, and someone would come in and offer a huge amount to Rob Edwards' team going into the new season. And that's completely valid. I think the other side of things, where people maybe a little bit more concerned about his injury record, someone who's struggled to stay fit for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So why would Middlesbrough go out and hang their hat on a striker who they don't really know is going to be available for a full season? It's probably quite unlikely based on the last few seasons. So there is an element of risk there as far as Middlesbrough are concerned. I think should those risks be alleviated and should Middlesbrough look to bring him in on a permanent basis, I think Danny Ings would come in and he would be a really good attacking option. I don't think he would be someone who would dislodge Tommy Conway as Middlesbrough's first choice striker. It seems from the posts on Middlesbrough social media accounts that Tommy Conway is going to be claiming the number 9 jersey going into the new season, which is a big telltale sign that he is the man that Middlesbrough are backing to lead the line into the new campaign. I think he enjoyed a really good season with Middlesbrough, his first since joining from Bristol City last summer. So he's going to be someone who the attack is very much going to be built around at the Riverside Stadium. But Danny Ings is someone who would come in and be a really good backup squad option. I think he's someone who could come on and do a really good job in the second half of games if Middlesbrough are chasing it. Obviously, the Championship fixture schedule is pretty relentless as well. So I think Danny Ings is someone who would get a good amount of game time and would get a reasonable amount of starts as well. I mean, you've obviously got the added predicament as well that while Tommy Conway is Middlesbrough's first choice striker, just one injury to him could prove to be really, really disastrous for Middlesbrough, because we don't really have another option at the moment. So adding someone of Danny Ings' quality into the team, someone who was proven at scoring goals in the Championship, could be a really, really shrewd move. Whether he'll prove to be Middlesbrough's second choice striker remains to be seen. It could be the case that Middlesbrough would still like to add another striker to the mix. It might be that Middlesbrough go out and sign another attacker, because obviously the likes of David Strelec has been linked with the club, and a few other forwards as well. So Middlesbrough might not just be done if they were to sign Danny Ings. They might be wanting to go out and sign someone else as well. So it might be that they have 3 first choice strikers, and Danny Ings is a sort of more experienced third choice in that sort of scenario. But would Ings want to come in and be a third choice striker at a Championship club? I'm not so sure. So there's a lot of debate there. There's a lot of questions about where he would fit into Middlesbrough's team if he was to sign. So it's going to be a really, really interesting couple of days and couple of weeks, really, with regards to this one, to see whether Middlesbrough do opt to sign Danny Ings and whether he is someone who will become a Middlesbrough player going into the start of the new campaign. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you think about this potential Danny Ings deal. Personally, I think it's quite an exciting one. It's a deal which would offer real excitement to supporters, and while there has to be sort of tempered expectations with regards to his age and his injury record of late, I do think that he is someone who has the quality and the leadership to come in and have a real impact on Rob Edwards' team. But I want to hear from you. Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think of Danny Ings and whether you'd like to see him in a Middlesbrough shirt going into the new season. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, please hit subscribe as well, and I will catch up with you next time.